Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It is a bit challenging in the workplace nowadays, and we've been talking about that. You have challenges finding people to work, people to be invested in the business, really enjoy what they're doing. And she is somebody that has worked with CEOs and business owners from all different levels for decades, helping them really turn their business around. And we're going to get even deeper today in terms of collaboration and why that's so important in the workplace. She is Lois Sonstegard, and she joins us again. Lois, how are you?
I am good today. Thank you so much. Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day, and to all our veterans, thank you for your service. We appreciate it. There's so many things that go unnoticed, and we don't talk about it. So yeah, we thank you for that. And a lot of those veterans back into the workplace over the years, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge. And we started with collaboration last time we talked. Why don't we define that? When we say collaboration, what do we mean?
Great question, Steve. Collaboration is when two or more people come together. They choose to work together, develop a relationship to accomplish a common goal. And it's that common goal that is key, because I think a lot of times we confuse collaboration with connections or networking. And although that's part of building a relationship, it doesn't produce a result. So with collaboration, we're looking for results.
I love the word relationship, and I'm glad you said it, because that's really what it comes down to. It is a relationship. No matter what level it is, you're connecting with people.
We're connecting with people. And you know, Steve, I have been so concerned this past week as I've watched, actually probably the last 2 weeks, as I've watched some of what's been talked about on social media, but also what we're seeing. Because remember, last 2 weeks, we talked a little bit about the Great Resignation and then the silent quitters.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that what was coming behind it was the great layoffs. It was being projected to come perhaps in 2023. It has already begun. You know, we saw Twitter reducing 50% of their workforce, and then Meta eliminated 11,000 positions. Salesforce eliminated hundreds of positions. Stripe 1,000, Lyft, and the list goes on. We are at the front end of layoffs. So the problem that I see with this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this podcast, because it's almost like a whole series in itself that really needs attention. But when we're when we're laying people off, companies are doing it to accommodate the economic downturn that they're facing. But what we're not talking about is what are the unintended long-term consequences to our actions. And those are consequences both on the employee side with the resignations and also with the silent quitting, but also on the employer side now with the great layoffs. Before all this began, we had a trust level at 24%. So 2.5 people out of 10 trusted their leadership. It's going to get worse.
I can't even imagine it. I mean, I don't want to be negative, but it was bad enough. The economy, the work situation where you can't, I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. You can't find people to work, but then we're also laying people off. It almost doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And there's a real disconnect between what people are now anticipating, expecting, wanting, and what employers can give. And so here's my concern. Here's the unintended consequence. If people don't want to come back to work and be engaged, employers are going to have to look elsewhere for employment. That means overseas potentially. That could leave our cities that have single employers, for example, with huge parts of that population in the city unemployed. What happens then to that city? What happens to our economy? We have offshored it, but we have left our cities absolutely bankrupt. And that coming back from that, if we allow it to get to that point, that will be very, very difficult. But here's the good news. I think that with collaboration, we have a way of dealing with this. We have a way of cutting the problem off before it really becomes disastrous. And so it makes me even more passionate about collaboration and its importance.
So where do we go from here, knowing that collaboration is so essential to move our workforce and even our economy? How do we begin from this point?
It's a great question. And so one of the things that surprised me as I started working on collaboration was the notion that collaboration is capital. It goes beyond being nice. It is now a business imperative. So a company's collaborative capital, I think, and many others are now, or at least a group of people, leaders, are beginning to say it's of equal importance to intellectual and financial capital. So it's an essential company asset. It should be on our balance sheet. And maybe that's how we should redefine goodwill. I don't know, but that's how important it is. And so companies that don't collaborate are going to be without one of their most valuable assets. And it is going to be essential for survival. It will define the companies of the future. So back to what you said or asked about, why don't we collaborate, right? If it's so great, why don't we collaborate? And I think part of it is that we think that it's going to take more work. In reality, once you start and the process is in place, actually, you're more efficient, more effective. And so you're able to do more work. In the work that Deloitte did, they found actually that productivity increased 34%. So think of that. What you think of as, building relationships taking time, actually you get more work done and it takes less time. But I think another reason why we don't do it is we're not clear about what we're trying to solve. Our organizations aren't real clear. And part of that's because they're siloed, or because we've stopped daring to look at opportunities. We don't think we can do it. And I want to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then, of course, I think we've got, the age-old issue of fear. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my identity and my sense of who I am, right? And then there's people who their ego is just so big, they can't think past themselves. And we have trouble with, this is me, that is you. And we're afraid that in collaboration, I'll lose that identity. And actually, I think it strengthens it.
I completely agree. And I always say, I know it's a cliche, but I'm a team player, but I am. I'd rather work with people than work alone because it's strength in numbers.
Isn't that the truth? And you can hear that, Steve, in just the way you talk and the questions that you ask. And that, that's what's interesting. You can almost feel the collaborative people.
Interesting. Be mindful of that in the future, because those are the people you want to work with. So let's say you are a business owner, you're watching, you're listening, you're hearing this word collaboration, you kind of have an idea about what it is, it's important based on what we're talking about. How do you set the framework? How do you begin that?
Great question. So I think of about 5 or 6 things as being critical. The first is choose the right partner. Not everybody is a collaborator, and we have to be willing to admit that. There are people who simply can only gobble up people and spit them out. And so don't waste your time there. They're not going to collaborate with you. They're going to compete. They're going to destroy you if they can. So the right partner is when I want to talk a little bit more about that, setting boundaries so you know what is me, what is them. Creating a collaboration doesn't mean that you lose your identity. Rather, you enrich it and broaden it and make it more firm. And then you look at leveraging each other's resources and expertise and knowledge and relationships for mutual gain. And that's the key word, mutual gain.
Mm-hmm.
So, Steve, if I want to do something and collaborate with you, I have to look at not only how I'm going to benefit, but what am I doing to help you benefit? And how will it grow what you're doing? You know, we get the first part of that equation sometimes, which is the money part. I'll make sure you get some money, some remuneration out of this. But is that really your goal? What is it you're trying to achieve? And so we need to go past those surface level things that we tend to look at. The fourth thing is when we collaborate, we widen our view and we begin to see opportunities. And this is huge. And this is something that is really important in the collaborative process that I put together for companies, because you move far beyond what it is that you could do by yourself. And then you need to commit to a collaborative process. So those are the basic components. So can I go through each one of those and talk a little bit about what makes a good partner, for example?
Oh, please do. And even I just want to interject here that it's probably the most important part of all of this. And I have memories. I left a big position, joined somebody in his business for a marketing company. This is going back probably about 12, 15 years. And it seemed like it was a good fit. We're on the same page, but I didn't see another side of him. And again, we talk about the relationship where he was growing in this direction and just getting super greedy. And that's not me. And he was using my reputation to grow his business. And, my financial gain on it was like this. I'm like, well, that's not what we talked about. And I had to end that relationship. I went on to do it myself, and it was fantastic after that. But to your point, it's a relationship. Sometimes it can be like a marriage when you're collaborating with somebody.
Steve, I think that is one of the most difficult parts. There isn't a single one of us, I don't think, that has been an entrepreneur that hasn't had that experience of having a partner that just you go different ways, you bifurcate, and you wake up one day and you go, wow, there's no retrieval of this, right? But I think there's ways, and part of our process that we put in place is systems that allow you to figure this out really in short-term spans so you don't go down that road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important because you have to protect yourself. We have to be realistic. We're also dealing with humans, and we all come with our own needs, our own hurts, our own histories, right?
And it depends on when you collaborate. Don't mean to cut you off, but sometimes when you're coming from one part of your life into another and collaborating with somebody, you could be even more vulnerable, and then somebody could take advantage of that. So yes, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So along with that comes, I think, a mindset of generosity and gratitude. Are they givers, or do they only take? And then another one is a positive attitude. I had no clue how important this was. I mean, I knew it was important, but I didn't realize how important it was until with one of my manufacturing companies, it was in the beauty business, and we were doing a photo shoot in Hollywood. The photographer I had was a Hollywood photographer. He was also a former Marine. So he was very artistic, but he had this Marine drive. And we came to the photo shoot. I called him from Minneapolis and said, would you please help me with this and schedule the talent that we need? We needed 10 models. He put together a group of 200 from which we had to sort down to 10. I said, oh my goodness, this is going to take us days to figure it out. Let me go get the stylist, the makeup people, and we'll figure out the models. It'll take time. He goes, no, we will be done with this job, the first round, in 2 hours. I said, really? How are we going to do that? He said, first of all, we're not going to have makeup or hair here. We're going to do it based on 3 questions. Here were the 3 questions. What's your name? What's your address? What was your last gig? That was it. And he said, what we listen for is, how do they respond? If they're annoyed because they know that they already wrote on the application their name, eliminate them. If they don't think that it's your right to know their address, eliminate them. And if they don't want to tell you what their last gig is, eliminate them. You know what? Each one got about 2 to 3 minutes. And in that period of time, we whittled it down to the 10 people we needed. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I'm shocked. Wow.
So, and that was beauty. And so, I mean, I said, how are we going to manage this and have the top talent we need for beauty? He said, Lois, there's always a beautiful person, but there is not always a great attitude. And one bad attitude will destroy our photo shoot. So about 2 years later, we were invited by the German consulate and the US consulate to host a event in Milan. It was at a private villa, and only people who had access to political pull could host an event at this villa. And so we were invited to do an event. And it was going to consist of a photo shoot first, and then it was a champagne brunch and discussions with the top fashion magazines of Europe. So we had Marie Claire, Mademoiselle, Vogue, all the big people were there. Mm-hmm. And again, we needed to go through models and figure out who we were going to have. And so we went around the room asking the 3 same questions: your name, your address, your last gig. And at that time, we had a little bit larger group, and we all, got together, looked at what our results were. All of us agreed on the candidates for the photo shoot, except for our photographer. And he objected to one that we had put on our list. And he said, okay, we'll go through and ask a second series of 3 questions and see how they respond and see what you decide. The second time, we eliminated the one that we had all of us except for our photographer had agreed on before. As soon as we made the announcement, this model went into an explosion. She was considered Europe's top model, and why would we not have her? We had Miss Brazil there. We had a top person from Romania. I mean, we had the creme de creme of talent there. But the number one of Europe, we eliminated. Finally, we had to have her removed. And so there was the photographer's point. Imagine if on the day of your event, this had happened, you would have had the whole event destroyed. And that's the problem with attitude. Mm. You don't control it, you don't predict it, and it's destructive.
Wow.
So choosing your right partner, having a positive attitude. I learned you better have a positive attitude.
It means everything. In that situation, I have 2 words for that. Bye-bye. See ya. Yeah. You don't want anybody like that on your team. And it doesn't matter how famous you are, beautiful you are. It's, you know what? It's toxic. That type of attitude is going to bring everybody down and just not good. There's other people you can find. Sure.
So second is look at your boundaries. Know what your boundaries is. And this is where people who are self-confident know their boundaries. Think of a family. A strong family knows who they are. They can go out in the community and work and do things and never lose their identity because they know who they are. They know what they're contributing. You don't lose yourself. Actually, you grow because of your contribution and your connections, right? Mm-hmm. But we fear that. What am I going to lose instead of what am I going to gain?
It's an interesting way to put it because we normally don't think of it that way.
Right? We don't. We get stuck on so many things that in the end really probably don't matter so much. But that is where we get stuck. And then I think the other, Steve, is opportunities. When we collaborate, we see opportunities that far exceed what we could see by ourselves. When I was growing up in Japan, there was a saying that they had in Japanese, and that was, once your eyes get widened, they can never be narrowed again. So if you only have narrow vision, this is what you see. But once you widen them, you now have a wide vision that takes in a lot that you never were able to take in before. So that's what collaboration does. It widens your vision. You now have 180, 360 vision, and it goes off into the distance. So the more we collaborate, the more that we see of opportunities. And then another aspect of collaboration is using and sharing resources. One of the interesting pieces of research comes out of research at universities looking at success of students. And what they were studying was what groups of students do best on test scores. And what they looked at was they took students that performed at an equal level. So they took all their test scores, their SAT scores, their ACTs from before college, and then looked at how they were performing in college. And here's what they found that was so interesting. The Asian students outperformed all the others. Do you know why?
What's that?
They worked together. They wanted to make sure each other succeeded. They came back. They worked in groups. They talked. They solved the problems together.
Interesting. It's like for the greater good.
For the greater good. Yep. They were working for the greater good. And that is what we have so much trouble with. We struggle with that, is if I let you grow, will I grow? If I share my knowledge, will you take my knowledge away from me? Knowledge is infinite. It grows, right?
Absolutely.
If we just, right?
And that knowledge you could probably get someplace else. It's usually not proprietary coming from a person you're collaborating with. If you seek it, you shall find it. But sometimes we're protective of the secret sauce, and there's no reason to do that.
And in today's world, if knowledge is your only key to success, you're time limited because everybody has access through the internet.
True. Yeah. It's not just knowledge. And I think you would agree, Lois, it's this right here.
Yes. It's that heart space. Heart space is one of the hardest things for people to capture, but boy, you feel it. Right away, you feel it. So then the other thing that's critical is a process, a collaborative process, and it needs to be methodical. It needs to be thought through. And that's one of the things that I really want to spend some time in the next 2 sessions talking about is what is that process? Because it doesn't just happen. You don't just fall into a successful collaborative relationship. It really takes some management. Think of it. If you're going to go to the orchestra and you have all of these people sitting in the chairs on the stage, right? A lot of people. And with different instruments, each thinking probably that they're sort of maestros by themselves. If you don't have a conductor who keeps them all in place so that they're doing what they're supposed to do, the first violinist, spends hours figuring out, is this going to be an upstroke or a downstroke, right? Because that changes the music. And that's something that is done looking at the whole group and what their talent is. So you need a process that brings out the best of everybody, draws on their resources and networks, and then allows you to grow and to build.
I think also, and it's a great analogy, the orchestra, that everybody needs to be considered an equal. Everybody always looks at the conductor. Oh, look at him. He's the man. He's leading everybody. He's not playing an instrument. Okay. So he's just as valuable as everybody else there is.
That is so true. He's just as valuable. And you also wouldn't have an orchestra like that without a conductor, right?
You can't survive. You can't survive. You need the conductor, you need the violinist, you need the cello player. Everybody needs to be working together and considered an equal.
So, but we try hard often to do it without. So here's one of the things that I think people should think about. You think of the problems that we're dealing with talent right now in the workplace, or think of businesses right now. The supply chain issues are only becoming more profound. Of course, talent for any business is becoming more and more difficult. And then the third, the access to capital, is also becoming tighter. So you look at those issues, and as companies, as managers, leaders, we tend to look at our situation and we say, well, okay, I can't do that because we've tried it before, it didn't work, or it's not possible, it can't be done. There's no solution to that problem, right? Have you heard those?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've all heard it. So I think in collaboration, where I start people is to say, what could I dare to do if I could partner with anyone I needed to partner with to accomplish something I could not accomplish by myself? Or what am I avoiding because I say to myself, it's not possible? Right? If you start there, your eyes begin to broaden. And then the next question is, okay, so if I could dare to do this, if I could have any partner I wanted, who are those partners and where do I need to begin to look? So that's your very, very first process that needs to be addressed. And then from there comes some very specific steps.
I think we're going to get to that next time because we're just about out of time, but some great stuff. And I'm thinking, I have a business idea. I put it on the back burner like 8 months ago, like, nah, there's a reason here. And just yesterday, Lois, I thought about it. I'm like, this is possible.
It is possible.
Why am I putting these blocks out? Now wait a minute. And things have changed along the way, but now it's almost like, there it is. Let's go. Let's move forward toward that. So very inspiring. A lot of things.
Put your ecosystem together that will solve that problem for you. And when you do for yourself, it's amazing. You're going to solve problems for others as well. So I look forward to that next conversation. Good for you. You keep thinking on it. It will maybe help you look at that.
You know what? There's things happen for a reason. There's a reason we're talking about this. What's your website, by the way?
It's Lois. It's www.buildtomorrow with the number 2. So BUILD 2morrow.com. And people can contact me at Lois@buildtomorrow.com. LOIS@buildtomorrow.com.
Always a pleasure talking with you. You truly are a breath of fresh business air and an inspiration too. And looking forward next time we collaborate.
Oh, wonderful.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.